And we are live. Welcome, folks, to episode number 42 of the Minor League Geeks podcast. I am your host, Brant Ramlin with Ranj, and with me this week, across the hemisphere, across the universe, my close Australian friend, Mr. Brent C. Turner.
Welcome to our show.
You are not Russian. That is the wrong accent.
Okay. Now, welcome everybody. It's good to. It's only the two of us today. It's just a dual cast. We didn't fight each other to the death last time.
Nope.
Not good enough anyway.
Mm-mm.
He slapped me really good up in the face, and I slapped him back. And we're like, oh, we'll duel. He said, oh, pistols or swords. And then he said pistols, so I had to take the sword.
I don't think if we met in real life again, or when we meet in real life again, one of us would have traveled so far, it would hardly make sense for us to try to murder each other.
Yeah, we're just like, oh, I'm just so fucking tired.
Yeah,
that's why the Olympics and the World Cup doesn't make sense, because you see some teams are just traveling halfway across the world and then they're playing the next day or a day and a half later, where some teams have been there half a week and they can be prepared. But that's not what we're talking about this episode.
No, we're not. What we are talking about, because it's just the two of us, I thought it would be fun if we gave you some recommendations. Tell you how to spend your time after you're done listening to this wonderful podcast. This I think we can do multiple recommendation shows. Every once in a while, I think we should, especially when we have different people on, etc., etc. Maybe pick different criteria, different forms of media. But this episode, we're going to give you one recommendation each for a television show, movie, comic, video game, and then musical artist. Just stuff we've been vibing on recently. It doesn't necessarily the stuff doesn't necessarily have to be current. God knows mine aren't. And the way things are going to go is I'll start with my television show, and then Brent will tell you his television show, and then so on and so forth. It'll be tit for tat. I won't just go down my list and then have you be jarring and go back to Brent's list, and you're talking about stuff we've already spoken about. That would be complicated, Brent.
Yeah, it would. No, we can first we'll measure the TV dicks, and then we'll measure the game dicks, and then we'll measure the music.
Right, of course.
Just to make everybody understand. Sorry, that's very vulgar. I apologize.
You son of a bitch. Bring vulgarity to this family-oriented show. So we're gonna kick things off with my television show. Again, we're not necessarily going for hits to cred or anything. Just stuff we've been vibing on. And very recently, I have watched the last 4 seasons of Seinfeld. So I was recently on a Seinfeld kick. I didn't watch all of Seinfeld. It was on as I was a child, I guess technically as I was growing up. Didn't watch it then. And I didn't even really watch too much of it in repeats, although reruns or syndication is technically the correct term. Although I had friends who are fanatics, and I did see some key episodes. They would come over and say, "No, we have to watch the Fusilli Jerry or the Soup Nazi episode." But I'd only seen a handful of them, and then I think it was my freshman year of college I ran through the series, and then I loved it. It was great, but I didn't. Still didn't take hold. And then I watched it again recently, the latter few seasons, and it's really grown on me. Even kind of the non-iconic episodes, and I think that my appreciation for it may have been heightened by the fact that I have watched all of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and so I'm way more hip to Larry David's humor than I may have been upon viewings initially. But I think it's an absolutely dynamite show, and definitely holds up. Many of the concepts are timeless. So I know that you've seen this, Brent. So I'm gonna ask you what your opinion on the Seinfelds are.
I love Seinfeld. It's one of it's in my top 5 series of movies, and like a lot of the things that I have a top 5 for, like I don't have them written out, set in fucking carved stone. They're all kind of interchangeable. Like, depending on my mood, one will just shift right to the top. But I love Seinfeld. One of my favorite episodes is one of the very early ones, and yeah, it's in the first or second season. Jerry finds all his grandpa's old shit because knows his grandpa's apartment, maybe, and Kramer sees the box and is like searching through it, and he finds all this old stuff, and then George finds the statue. I think that's the name of the episode. It's called The Statue, and it's the one that he broke when he was a child. And he wants to give it back to his parents. And my favorite part about that, this is when do you remember this one? And the guy came in and cleaned Jerry's apartment and supposedly stole the statue.
Vaguely, yeah, because I only really watched the latter 4 seasons this past viewing, but I have seen all of them once.
And it's one of my favorite because it has one of my favorite scenes where Kramer's dressed up in all Jerry's old granddad's clothes, so he's got and he looks like a 40s, 50s cop. And he, when they're suspecting that this guy that has stolen from Jerry and subsequently George, Kramer's just sitting there on the couch. And, we should get him, and they're just talking no, that's a stupid idea, Kramer. You're crazy. And then later in the episode, he actually dresses up like in Jerry's grandfather's old clothes, goes to this guy's house and takes the statue back in a fucking hilarious way, just pretending to be a cop. He's like, "Hey, you do? Yeah, you're the punk I'm looking for." I mean, I can't do the accent really well because I'm not American.
That is true. You're not American.
Where his name is? I don't know. Richard. I found it.
Okay, Brent. You cut out there a little bit at the end. What's your television show? Brent, you appear to be muted.
Muted? I'm muted?
Now you're back.
But what happened? How long was I going for?
10 seconds, perhaps?
What did I miss? Because I think I kept talking.
What's your television show?
What's my television show?
Yeah.
Sorry. My number one television show is an Australian one. It's not. It's a real life one, and it's called Gruen Planet. It was previously called The Gruen Transfer. It's about advertising. And they have a very simple format. It's a 30-minute show hosted by an Australian comedian, and they have a bunch of different advertising executives on. Like they have a guy who owns his own advertising firm, and he does some really funny stuff and really good stuff. And they have one of the major guys from Channel 10. He's like really big in the industry. He's like the lead for advertising, I want to say. And they examine, they have a theme for each episode. Based on what's happening, like when the presidential election in America was happening, or when the prime ministership was up for grabs in Australia. They covered that and the advertising for that. Like same with the Olympics, they go on that and they figure out, or they already know because they're in the industry, pointing out the things that are wrong with it, or the things that are amazing about it. Like during the Olympics, there are some things that you will get seriously fined for if you have it in your ad. And then halfway through the show, they have a neat little segment where they put two smaller. They've earlier in the production put two smaller companies against each other and say, make an ad concerning this, and it's usually something humorous.
I was going to say, is this a comedy show? You said it is hosted by a comedian.
Yeah, but he's because it's a broadcast show. He's obviously not allowed. He's watching him on. If you like him through this show, and you would because he's very funny, but there's a lot of stuff that he can't say on the show that he would usually be riffing on. It's very funny. You remember that Power Thirst, that fake Power Thirst ad that was going around from College Humor ages ago? So they did an episode on shouty ads. The ones where they just yell, buy, look. And there's one in Australia for this company that sells doors, or this shop that sells doors. It's like, doors, get your doors, French doors, sliding doors. It's really fucking loud and obnoxious.
Right.
and they were, showing these and saying, well, gets people excited and energetic for it and pointing out all of that. And then at the end of the episode, they were like, oh, this is something that we found of someone clearly taking the piss out of these ads, and it was for an energy drink, and it was for Power Thirst. I started crying. I was laughing so hard because it was the first time I'd seen that ad.
Oh, man. Power Thirst. That is an amazing video.
Yeah. was great. It's just like Mother Nature will be like, slow down, and be like, fuck you, and kick her in the face with your energy legs.
So what's the name of this show again?
It's called Gruen Planet. Now it's called Gruen Planet, and previously in other incarnations was known as Gruen Transfer.
All right, I'm interested in that. As somebody, oh yeah, you could spell it, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Gruen.
Excellent. I have a degree in communications. Journalism is the specification, but communication students can also choose from advertising. And so I had to take some ad courses, and I'm fascinated by it. Marketing and stuff. I don't know. I'm not necessarily great at it, although I can, I'm convincing of stuff. But yeah, no, that sounds like something I'd be super interested. So I'm excited. Hopefully, I can find a way to watch it. So now let's talk about the films. Mine is a movie that I've watched a few times, but recently bought because it was released on the Criterion Collection. It's a movie from the 1980s called The Big Chill. And it's interesting because I hate spoilers, and so I'm gonna try. I want our recommendations to be like as spoil free as possible. But the gist of it, the back of the box, Brent Turner, is it's kind of due to some unforeseen circumstances, a bunch of old friends who used to go to college together in the 1960s all come together again, but it's the 1980s, and so their ideals have shifted, and they've kind of in some ways become what they've hated or used to hate. It's about growing up. It's about coming back together. It's about your oldest, most true kind of group of friends that when you get together, even if it's been a really long while, it doesn't feel like that long because the pieces just kind of fall into place. And if like one of those people were to if anything were to happen to one of those people, it would have like a seismic ripple throughout like your life. It's got a killer soundtrack, which is another reason why I really like it. Of course, it's people who went to school in the late 60s. So the soundtrack is all Motown from the 1960s and rock and roll music from the 1960s, which I'm very fond of. A fun flick. It's a comedy. The Criterion Collection version, if you can get your hands on it, or if it becomes part of Hulu in the United States, because Hulu has a Criterion Collection. A bunch of those titles available to stream. I think you should watch it because it's a really 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 fun flick, even though it has like serious points and stuff as well. So that is my pitch for The Big Chill.
Are there any people in it that I would know?
I'm trying to think.
Big Chill.
There were a couple of
like
undiscovered actors. Yeah, no. Jeff Goldblum is I guess like the big actor, but he wasn't a big actor at the time this movie was made.
Mm.
But I guess the interesting thing is that the most famous person associated with the film was actually the director, which is Lawrence Kasdan, which
he sounds familiar.
Yeah, he did work. He was the writer on The Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Return of the Jedi.
Oh, the Star Wars. I get it.
Yes. So actually, the movie he worked on after Return of the Jedi was The Big Chill. So he helped write Return of the Jedi. Then he helped write, direct, and was the executive producer on The Big Chill, which was his second.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, director role, and The Big Chill came out the same year as Return of the Jedi. It's a good ass movie. I'm not gonna lie. That I kind of just stumbled upon, and I absolutely love it. So I hope some of you check it out. It's well worth watching. So what about you, Brent C. Turner? What film are you recommending?
Film. One of my favorite movies of all time, and everybody should agree with me because if you don't get it wrong, is Die Hard, the original Die Hard movie.
Right. It's a Christmas story.
With the brute. It's a Christmas story. It's my favorite. Like everybody says, it's a great actually Christmas movie. Very subtly.
Mm-hmm.
I like it quite a lot. There are a lot of things that don't really make any sense in it. In some ways, where they're like, oh, they've done this thing really cleverly, or they've kind of done the thing that good movie makers can do, where they've just ignored like not ignored, but obscured what any 5 year like it's called the peekaboo effect,
Mm-hmm.
where you like, oh, you don't really notice something until if it happened in real life, you'd notice it, but in a movie, your movie watching brain is just like, oh, movie magic. Um, One of the things that it not annoys me, but is just kind of something that I noticed in it was the main villain, Hans Gruber, uh, played by, God damn it, why can't I remember his name? You know him. Shit.
Yeah, so I can't think
Severus
of.
Snape.
Right. Oh,
Why can't I remember his name?
no. I
Alan Rickman.
know. Yes.
It's Alan Rickman. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it is.
In it, in the movie. So the movie's really fucking old. If you haven't watched it, go drink enough until you can find the courage to fight your parents for failing you, and then watch it anyway. And then, sorry, and in it the villain like, oh, they're terrorists, they're taking over this building. No, that turns out they just want money from the company, or from someone who's the company, one of the companies that's in the building, and that kind of messed with me because they're actually thieves, but they're masquerading as terrorists. So for a huge diabolical plan, but the price for getting caught for terrorism is a lot worse than getting the price for getting caught for being a thief.
Substantially, yes.
Yeah. One of the things that I really do like about it, like I said before, is the stuff that they kind of explain away. Because in it, a certain character dies, and you're thinking, well, why didn't our hero save that character? And he explains it through, because it's a largely him by himself kind of movie. There's no like sidekick to help, him to bounce stuff off of. He answers questions that the audience would have already been thinking. So he's actually saying to himself, oh, shit, why didn't you save him, John? Well, because then you'd be dead too, asshole. Shit like
Right.
that, which I really like, because it saves a lot of people going, hey, why didn't he do the thing? Because he's an action star movie. Also, it kind of broke that whole image of an action star movie, where it used to be huge, not super intelligent dudes. And I'm not saying that Bruce Willis's character isn't smart in any sense of the word, but he wasn't ridiculously muscle bound. Like, you couldn't lift a guy up and throw him out a window. Like, he actually gets hurt. He gets cut and he bleeds. He leaves his shoes and bleeds everywhere. I mean, because you've seen it, but I love the movie.
It is a fine film, yes. So yeah, I think you should watch Die Hard, another classic film. Less of a cult classic now, I think. More of just a classic. Next up, we're going to talk about comic books. Now, Brent, I hope you're ready to talk very quickly, because my comic choice is basically just a PSA to get Brian Lee O'Malley, whose first graphic novel was Lost at Sea, but he is very most well known for the Scott Pilgrim series.
Yep.
It's his new book. It came out a couple of weeks ago. It's called Seconds. And again, Brent, all I'm gonna say before I throw it over to you, because it's such a new thing, is that if you liked Scott Pilgrim, both kind of like the art style and the basic vibe, then you are going to have a lot of fun reading Seconds. I've been waiting since the end of the Scott Pilgrim book series for like, oh my god, what's he gonna do next? Because I got into Scott Pilgrim very late. I got into Scott Pilgrim after the 6th book had come out already, and before the movie came out. So I binged. I got home. I went on vacation, and then I got home, and I'm like, oh, this Scott Pilgrim movie looks interesting. but I hear that it's based on these comic books. So I went to the bookstore and picked one up, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna read this, and like if I really like it, let's see what happens. I read it and then like went right back to the bookstore, and then like picked up the next two, and then 2 days later I went back and bought the next three, and then now they're all coming back out in color, the Scott Pilgrim series, and I'm collecting those, and I will finally have the complete 6-volume set in color. I think in October is when the final one is coming out, or November. The next one, book 5, is coming out in a couple of weeks, and then the book 6 is going to be coming out, I think, a few months later. But I'm excited. I'm excited as hell because they did a really great job with that.
I liked that movie. I enjoyed the movie. I read the comic books a bit, and I liked those as well. I like the way they're drawn. The characters are a little bit. They're like cartoon. They look like video game characters. I don't know what to say. Like they're all.
Yeah, no, they do. They do. They have a video game character like look to them. Yeah. No doubt.
They all of the characters look slightly plump. Like not in a fat overweight way, but they've got a softness to them that seems very accessible and a little bit at odds with the subject matter. That sounded very highfalutin with what they're talking about and what the story's about.
It's fine. Brent, what about your comic? What are you laying on us here?
There was a comic that I did the same thing with you, where I was like, I'm interested in this, and then I started reading it, and then I started buying all of those, and that was Invincible. But the one that I like, because I like Invincible a lot, but the one I want to talk about is Kingdom Come. It's a DC Comics series. Have you, short one-off, what-if kind of thing. Have you read Kingdom Come?
No, I haven't. But again, now since this isn't, when did it come out? That's my first question, I guess.
It's set. Imagine. So this was written in like the 90s. It's got a really cool art style. That is one of those ones that's timeless, because there are a lot of comics from like the 80s and 90s and a little bit earlier that I can't read because I've just been spoiled by how good comics look now in terms of the technology they use to produce them.
Right.
Just the cleanness and like the motion now of characters moving and fighting looks better than it did back then. It doesn't look as cardboard cutout like. Doesn't mean the stories aren't good. But Kingdom Come is great. It's set in the DC universe, so it's like Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, etc., etc., etc. And it's set now, but the future that people in the 90s thought was going to happen. Like imagine in 80 years what people thought was going to happen in the 90s. So everything was going to be extreme, Uber and skateboards were going to be everywhere. No, it's like, but that's how it was kind of headed. Superman's retired, Batman's old. Actually, don't remember what happened to Wonder Woman. I need to reread it because it's fun. But essentially, what happens is Superman's retired because new heroes were popping up and they were doing things. They were essentially doing what most people think a lot of superheroes in the DC universe should do, which is fucking kill these villains that are just insane. So these new guys come up. This one guy is essentially opposes Superman. The Joker ends up killing Lois in some sort of pre-story thing that you don't really get to see. Mm-hmm. And this new guy. Oh, and by the way, when he kills Lois, he kills like half of Metropolis, I think.
Try not to get too spoilery, man. You want people to check this thing out.
Okay. Let me pull back. So Superman's retired. He essentially comes back, and he's old, so he's got like that grey streak down the side of his hair, and he's all farm boyed up. It's really cool. He comes back, takes back over from these unruly youths, because all the villains are supposedly gone, so these superhuman man people are just fucking fighting in the street. All these young superheroes are just brawling. And essentially it's a cool story about why Superman is so fucking terrifying, because he's so powerful. Mm-hmm. Like there are some allusions to, like you can compare it in some ways to World War II. I don't want to say that too much because it makes it sound really terrifying, but you can see where they join. And Batman is opposed to Superman. It's really cool. Is more than a little bit more than I'm gonna say.
Right on.
But it's completely separate from like the main stories. It's a what if, like, what if this happened? What if in 80 years this, etc. happened, which I really like.
No, those what if stories can be very, very fun. So now we've spoken about the television, we've spoken about the films, we've spoken about the comic books. Now we're going to talk about video games. A video game to recommend to people. And I've gone back recently and been playing some Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, also out on Virtual Console. And the reason why I loved it when it came out, I guess I played it for the first time. And the first time I ever played it, I rented it around when it came out, and I was 5, and the intro sequence scared me. And so I did not play it.
What was the intro sequence?
Peach gets captured by Bowser. But it was like all in 3D, and it vibed me out. So I didn't want to play it anymore. But then a friend of mine lent it to me in the early 2000s, and I got really, really into it. And now I replay it every once in a while. Nintendo and Square Enix partnered up. They put Mario in the RPG role. It's not just a platformer. Threw him in with some characters that everybody knows and some characters that were made specifically for the game and have not returned. It's got, for the time, gorgeous graphics. It introduced, for those fans of the Mario and Luigi series and Paper Mario series, the whole idea of like the timed hits or action commands came from Super Mario RPG. And it's not crazy hard. Great writing. And that's kind of what keeps me going back to it. It's like revisiting an old friend. Like, oh, all right, I remember how all this used to go. I love the dialogue. It's funny as hell.
It is really funny. I liked it. I didn't play it all the way through when I played it the first time, but it was really fun. Like I enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. The art style was neat. Like it was kind of a evolution. I think the art style for it actually holds up pretty well.
Yes.
I wish it'd be cool if they made a new version of it for like 3DS or something. It was just really neat. But just like everything had a weird, like, because I'd never seen Mario in 3D, I think, until that point, or at least when I played the game, I hadn't.
Yeah. My last point before I throw it over to you is that now in my a little bit of my later years, with the advent of the full-on internet and my full-on geekiness, I realized that Super Mario RPG came out. I think it was 4 months before Super Mario 64. Like, it's just weird that if you were kind of a Mario fanatic in that timeline, you would have played Super Mario RPG, and then you would have had Super Mario 64 waiting in the wings soon afterwards. That's a whole bunch of Mario goodness.
Yeah, because the 3D in Super Mario 64 was real, like you could actual 3D, whereas with polygons and stuff, whereas in and you could move the camera, whereas to a certain extent, but with Mario RPG, it was
static,
kind of.
It like followed you.
Yeah, it was like top corner, third person-y.
Yeah, it's just so good. It's so good.
It's fun.
Yeah. So, Mr. Turner, what about yourself?
For me, I'm gonna go. It seems like kind of a an obvious answer at this point in time is The Last of Us. I really like that game. I really acknowledge its problems because they're problems that I fucking noticed right away. If I'm really not gonna, this is one of the ones that I'm super sensitive about spoiling for people because it's one of the ones that I feel is so good.
It's an experience.
Yeah, there's some heavy shit going down on this. It's got the voice talent of Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, very good actors. It's made by Naughty Dog, the guys who made Uncharted. If you played the Uncharted games and you like them, or hey, if you played Crash Bandicoot and you like those, because God knows I fucking did.
I don't know if you if you went from Crash Bandicoot to The Last of Us, that's a jump.
That's a fucking jump. It's like, oh man, I really like running from this boulder backwards. Oh, this guy with a giant head's kind of weird. And then suddenly you're just shivving people. It's like, oh, okay, this terrifying thing where you can see the terror on the enemy's face as you're choking them out. That's something that messed with me, because in most games that's one of the things that I always tout to people, is that in most games it's like, oh, shoot dead, shoot dead, shoot dead, or you stab someone or choke them and they're just there. But when you choke someone in The Last of Us and you sneak up behind them and you're pulling them, the camera moves a bit so you can see their face a bit easier, or the character models move, and you see terror on these enemies' faces.
Have you played the remastered version for the PlayStation 4?
No, I'm going to though. Probably in the next week or so when I get paid. I'm gonna buy it. I'm not sure if I should buy it digitally.
Do they have the promotion in Australia that they had in the US? Because I know that GameStop is a multinational corporation. Do they have any down there?
We have EB Games.
Oh, EB Games. I didn't. Oh, yeah, but it's apples and oranges. I think that because they GameStop bought everything.
I think they're owned by the same company, but they operate slightly separately.
Yeah, just because GameStop had a deal this week that if you traded in The Last of Us for PS3, they'd give you 50% off Last of Us for PS4.
Oh, well, I wouldn't be doing that anyway, because I love that. Because I would like to just have, because I still have my PS3, I'd still like to have my both versions so that I can show people the difference. Because I've seen some videos which online, I know they're all compressed and it's a bit harder to
old
see,
console is old, Brent C. Turner. Yeah. Stop living in the past. Play Super Mario RPG.
You kick the walker out of my hands. Come on, old man. But it's a really cool game. The acting's really good. I feel like I love the Uncharted series. I feel that Naughty Dog's taken what was kind of, I wouldn't say their weakness, but just a little bit of, like, not what they were as excellent at as some other companies in terms of the shooting, because the shooting in Uncharted is not great. Like, you can't just, I mean,
I agree with you.
It's not as pinpoint, which most people, 90%, a lot of people agree. Even the people who hate it, people who love it, they usually can agree that the shooting's not great. But they use this to the advantage in The Last of Us, because it's not a pulp action movie. It's a, traveling across America, harrowing journey kind of shit. And like, you can see his hands are kind of shaking because he's like, oh shit. Like, he's a hardened killer, but it's still, if you've ever actually shot a gun, you can't just hold it completely still. Like, there are limited resources.
It's a great game. If you go any further, I think you're going to start spoiling things, which is. Yeah. I played that game. It was one of the most stressful experiences of my entire life, but well worth.
Yeah, I was grinding my teeth. One tip: try to save your shivs. If you've never played it, save your shivs.
Yeah,
because they are really important. Numerous things.
It's a good tip. All right, that brings us to the last form of media in which we're making a recommendation, which is music. And in honor of Jerry Garcia's what would have been his 72nd birthday on Friday, or yesterday, as it were, recording on Saturday today, I'm going to recommend the Grateful Dead, a band that I was not into for a number of years, despite owning one of their albums. Their most famous album, American Beauty, came out in 1970. A friend of mine gave it to me as a present, and that was my junior year of high school. And I didn't get into the Grateful Dead until after my junior year of college. After my junior year of college. I was at a concert for another band. They played a Grateful Dead song. I thought, oh man, that's really good. And then I went home and was like, oh, I have some Grateful Dead. And then, much like the Scott Pilgrim series, I listened to that album and I'm like, Mother of God, I need more. And so I went out and bought another album, and I listened to that, and I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I was like, how long did they keep this run up? And so I bought more of them, and I figured out what era I liked. And yeah, I love me some Grateful Dead. If I were to recommend an album to anybody, it would be American Beauty or Working Man's Dead. They are not jammy albums, because I know that I didn't listen to Grateful Dead for a long time because I don't really like jam bands that much. Endless noodling for thousands of hours on the same song is annoying to me. But that's more of their live stuff. Their studio stuff is actually pretty tight, and no tighter than on American Beauty and Working Man's Dead. Some great records. So what about you, Mr. Brent C. Turner? Rounding us out, what music do you have to recommend to our listeners?
One that I was put off by the name. It's called Murder by Death, and despite the name, because it makes Murder by Death makes it sound like to me when I first heard it, made it sound like a death metal screamo kind of band. But that's not what they are. They're like a indie rock, indie folk, country kind of situation. I think they're really good. They're a five-person band from Indiana in America. They were recommended to me by Mr. Anthony Gallegos from Rebel FM and
the Comedy Button?
Zombie Studios. Yeah, Comedy Button. That's a much more Rebel FM Comedy Button. That's his stuff. I like them a lot. They've got a neat little style. They play a bunch of different instruments. I want to say it's kind of Mexican because I don't know any Mexicans. I don't know how politically correct I'm about to be. It's just like it's very Mexican-y in the way that like the stories are, or Western. They're very Western in the way that their music, like they have a lot of themes like whiskey and the devil, and there was one of their albums was you know what I mean.
I know, but that's amazing. Whiskey and the Devil sounds like the greatest country album of all time.
Interconcept albums. So their second album, hold on, let me just, Who Will Survive and What Will Be Left of Them, that's the name of one of their second album. It says, describes a story in which the devil wages war against a small village in Mexico. It's got a lot of really cool stuff. One of their favorite songs for me is called Brother and Coming Home. They just got a really nice, energetic, cool, I'm going to fight off some outlaws and save the girl, but oh no, something terrible happens. It's, by the way, if the name Murder by Death sounds familiar to you because you're a film aficionado, it's because they took the name from the 1976 Roger Moore film of the same name.
So, cool. Well, folks, we've recommended a lot of stuff to you. If you got some free time and you wanted to fill it with some sort of media, you now have recommendations spanning across different forms of media. So it's at this point in the podcast where we are going to tell you where to find us on the internet and then leave you to your devices. So, Mr. Brent C. Turner, where can people find you on the internet?
People can find me at Brent C. Turner on Twitter. I'm trying to post more things that are really. I'm gonna guess that's where you are if you're hearing the police.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try start. I am starting to do a bit of writing. I'm not nearly on the level of of Brant in terms of goodness of the writing. But if you find it entertaining, go to the. God damn it! Why can't I remember this? It's Ben's new site.
Oh, nkrn.org.
Yes, nkrn.org. You can find some of my stuff there when I get around to it, because it's been busy the last couple of days. But I'm going to start writing and spitting some slick words onto the paper that's digital in the internet.
Excellent. I've been your host, Brent Ramblin' with Range. You can find me on Twitter at branj, which is BRANJ. Find my writing at I'm cooking up some new stuff right now. Just keep it locked. Keep your podcast feed locked here, and your eyes can be on brandbranch.com, which is my name. I'm going to start some new interesting stuff fairly soon, but I can't talk about it right now. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at MLGeeks. You could write us a question, comment, or concern, minorleaguegeeks@gmail.com. We encourage you to rate us on iTunes and stuff as well. It helps us out. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening to us this wonderful day. And until next week, stay classy.
Peace.